Welcome to Talk Treatises. Today, we are wrestling with a text that essentially tried to reboot human civilization. We aren't just looking at a philosophy book, we're looking at a demolition order.
It really is a controlled explosion. We're talking about Francis Bacon's Novum Organum, published in 1620, and the title, it translates to the new instrument, or, the new tool.
And that title is a direct shot across the bow, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. The old instrument, the organon, was the collection of Aristotle's works on logic. For nearly 2,000 years, that was the Bible of thinking. Bacon steps up and just says, that tool is broken, it's rusted, throw it out, here's the new one.
That is a staggering amount of confidence. I mean, imagine telling the smartest people in the world they've been doing it wrong for centuries. What was the vibe in 1620 that made him think this was necessary?
Well, it was a time of immense frustration for people like Bacon. He looked at the universities, the monasteries, and he just saw stagnation. He called it the professorial style.
So just arguing over definition.
Exactly. You had generations of brilliant men who weren't looking at trees or stars. They were sitting in libraries reading what other men had written about trees and stars.
An echo chamber.
Precisely. And Bacon argued you had two camps. On one side, you have the dogmatists, who claim they knew everything because Aristotle had already figured it out.
And the other?
The skeptics, who just threw their hands up and said, humanity is too stupid to know anything. Bacon looks at this and says, you're both lazy.
And he opens with this incredible metaphor that really stuck with me, the obelisk.
It's a great image.
He describes a crowd of men trying to move this massive stone monument with their bare hands.
Captures the futility perfectly.
Right. And a spectator would think they're insane. But then the crowd decides to get serious. They hire more men, they pick the strongest men, and then, and this is the part I love, they tell the men to wash and grease their hands so they can grip the stone better.
And that's exactly what he thought the philosophers were doing, greasing their hands with rhetoric and logic, but still just using their bare hands.
So Bacon is the guy who shows up with a crane.
Exactly. He says we don't need more mental effort, we need a machine, a new method. He calls it the interpretation of nature. But before he can build the crane, he has to clear the site.
Which brings us to the diagnosis. And this is where I struggled a bit, because Bacon seems to have a real vendetta against logic. I always thought logic was the foundation of science.
He doesn't hate logic itself. He hates the syllogism as a tool for discovery.
Like all men are mortal, Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is mortal.
Right. The logic is perfectly sound. But Bacon asks, where did you get the premise that all men are mortal? Or even worse, all swans are white?
From looking around, I guess.
But did you look at all the swans, or did you just see three in a pond and decide, okay, that's a universal law? The syllogism just locks you into your initial mistake. It acts like a clamp.
I see. So it fixes errors rather than disclosing truth. It's great for organizing what you know, but terrible for finding something new.
Exactly. It just cements your ignorance. And Bacon says the human mind is naturally prone to these kinds of errors. He calls them the idols of the mind.
The idols. This is maybe the most famous part of the book. And reading them felt like a checklist for every argument on the internet.
Painfully relevant, yes.
So let's walk through them. First up are the idols of the tribe.
These are the bugs in the hardware of being human. They belong to the tribe of mankind. He uses this beautiful but kind of disturbing metaphor. He says the human mind is like an uneven mirror.
It distorts reality.
It does. It misses its own nature with the nature of things. For instance, we're obsessed with order. We see patterns where there are none.
Like seeing perfect circles in planetary orbits.
For thousands of years, not because the data showed circles, but because the human mind likes circles. They feel complete. That's an idol of the tribe.
Imposing our own preferences on the universe. So that leads to the second group, the idols of the den, or the cave.
It's a nod to Plato, but he spins it. If the tribe is our shared hardware, the den is your personal software. It's the little cave formed by your upbringing, your education, your personal experiences.
So this is basically confirmation bias.
It's the root of it, yeah. If you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Right.
If you're a theologian in 1620, everything looks like a message from God. That's your den.
Then we get the third group, which he says is the most troublesome of all.
Yeah.
The idols of the market.
The marketplace. This is all about social interaction and more specifically, language.
This one really tripped me up. How can words be an idol? We need them to think.
That's the trap. Bacon says words are created by the masses, the vulgar, for everyday practical things. But when scientists try to use those clumsy words for precise reality, it all falls apart. He says words react upon the understanding.
The tool controls the user.
Yes. We think we master words, but they master us. Think of a word like fortune or prime mover. We treat them like real things just because they're nouns.
Or vague words for real things. He uses moist as an example.
He does. We use it for water, for air, for glass. It's a messy bucket. If your words are sloppy, your science will be sloppy.
Which leads to the last group, the idols of the theater.
These are the grand philosophical systems. He calls them stage plays. Aristotle, Plato, the alchemists.
Yeah.
He says these aren't descriptions of reality.
They're scripts.
Exactly. They create neat, tidy, fictional worlds that have nothing to do with the messiness of nature.
So he's telling us to stop watching the show and go backstage.
Yes.
Okay, so the diagnosis is pretty grim. Our hardware is glitchy, our software is biased, our language is corrupt, and we've been watching a fake movie for 2,000 years. How do we fix it?
You stop anticipating nature and start interpreting it.
What's the difference?
The old way, anticipation, is grabbing a few facts and jumping to a huge conclusion. It feels smart, but it's usually wrong. Interpretation is a slow, grinding climb. You move from individual facts to small axioms, then to bigger ones, step by step. No jumping.
And he actually shows us how. He investigates the nature of heat. And I have to say, this section is tedious, but in a fascinating way. He starts with a list.
The table of essence and presence. He lists every single known instance where heat exists.
And it's a very weird list. You've got sun rays, lightning, flame, but then you have fresh horse dung and quicklime sprinkled with water.
It shows his commitment. The heat in a star and the heat in manure are, to him, data points of equal value. He's looking for the common thread.
So he's got this list of hot things. Then he makes a second list, which is really clever, the table of deviation, or absence.
The negative control. He looks for things that are very similar to the items on the first list, but that lack heat.
Like the sun, it's bright and hot. But then he looks at the moon, it's bright.
But cold. Or at least that was the thinking. So Bacon deduces that brightness or light cannot be the fundamental nature of heat.
He does the same with foxfire rotting wood that glows. It shines, but it isn't hot. So light is not heat.
He just keeps whittling it down.
And after all this, he comes to his first vintage. His conclusion. What is it?
This is the genius moment. He concludes that heat is not a substance. It's not a fluid. Heat is a motion.
A motion.
Specifically, an expansive, restrained motion among the tiny particles of a body.
He basically guessed the kinetic theory of heat 300 years early.
He did, and he got there not by a flash of insight, but by systematically eliminating everything that wasn't heat.
But he's not satisfied with just the method. He wants to speed it up. He introduces these prerogative instances.
Right. They're like shortcuts or power-ups for research.
The most famous one is the instance of the cross.
It sounds religious, but it's not. It refers to a signpost at a crossroads. Imagine you have two competing theories, A and B. You're stuck.
They both explain the facts so far.
An instance of the cross is a specific experiment that can only have one outcome if A is true, and a different outcome if B is true. It forces a decision.
It's the tiebreaker.
The crucial experiment.
I also really like the lancing or twitching instances.
Those are great. They're instances that remind us how subtle nature is. He talks about how a tiny pinch of saffron can color a whole barrel of water.
Why does that matter?
It cures us of the idol of the tribe that thinks big effects must have big causes. It reminds the scientists that the real action is happening at a level we can't see.
Which leads him to call for tools to help our senses.
Exactly. Instances of the door or the lamp. He's calling for microscopes and telescopes. Our bare senses are just like our bare hands, not good enough.
And all of this builds to one purpose, really. Power. Knowledge is power. That's his line, right?
It is, and he means it literally. He lists 3 inventions: printing, gunpowder, and the compass. He says they changed the world more than any empire. And he points out they were found by accident. Bacon's whole pitch is, what if we stopped relying on accidents? What if we could generate inventions on demand?
That's our entire modern world, R&D departments. Now, I want to take a moment here. Reading this, I couldn't help but apply his mindset to our world today. It sparked a few, Baconian thought experiments.
I like this. Go for it.
A brief disclaimer for our listeners. The following segment contains outlandish but plausible philosophical thought experiments inspired by the text. These are for entertainment and educational purposes only. Okay, so experiment 1, the idle filter. Imagine we build an AI that intercepts all communication and strips away the idols of the market. It deletes any word that doesn't correspond to a clear physical reality.
So words like destiny or luck, gone.
Gone. Vibes, deleted. The spirit of the age, redacted. Maybe even a word like the economy gets flagged.
That is a terrifyingly quiet world.
Right. Bacon feared that words react upon the understanding. If we took away all the ill-defined terms, would society collapse into silence? Or would we finally get that kingdom of man he promised?
It's a fascinating idea. Bacon would probably say, yes, there would be silence at first, but then we'd be forced to rebuild our language based on things, not notions. We'd stop arguing about freedom and start measuring specific physical freedoms. No more poetry, but maybe no more wars over misunderstandings.
He would absolutely sign up for that.
Yeah.
Okay, experiment 2, the cold sun generator.
The cold sun.
Yeah, so Bacon's table of absence notes that the moon has light, but no heat. And he defines heat as expansive motion. So what if we built a machine that could separate that motion from the light? A device that generates blinding light, but we mechanically dampen the particle motion so it's at absolute zero.
Based on his physics. Yeah, that should be possible. If heat is just motion and you stop the motion, you kill the heat.
So you'd have a beam of pure light that freezes whatever it touches. It feels like the ultimate test of his whole theory.
It really is. And amazingly, modern physics sort of backs him up. We use lasers to cool atoms now, so the cold sun is closer to reality than you might think.
My last one is the most extreme, the Library of Oblivion.
Go on.
Bacon says we should begin the whole labor of the mind again, a clean slate. So what if we did it? We'd take a generation of kids, raise them in a facility, teach them to read and write, but we ban all books written before 1620. No Plato, no Aristotle, no Bible, just Bacon's method and lab equipment.
And the question is, would they rebuild civilization faster without the baggage of the past?
Exactly. Bacon thought the ancients did nothing but talk. If he's right, these kids should surpass us in a generation because they aren't wasting time on the idols of the theater.
That is the ultimate gamble. And my gut says Bacon is actually wrong there.
Really? Why?
I think we'd find that the anticipations, all those bad guesses the ancients made, were necessary scaffolding. You have to guess wrong before you can measure right. If you burn the history of thought, those kids might spend 500 years just rediscovering that the earth is round. Bacon, I think, underestimated the value of failure.
That's a humbling thought. We need the error to find the truth.
I think that's the real lesson of the book, humility.
How so?
Bacon's core message isn't, I am smart. It's, we are delusional. He's saying the human mind is a flawed instrument. We can't command nature by yelling at it. We can only command nature by obeying her, by shutting up, looking closely, and submitting to the data.
And that brings me to a final thought for you. Bacon wrote this when information was scarce. The problem was filling the gaps with bad theories. Today, we have the opposite problem. We are drowning in information.
We certainly are.
So ask yourself, in the age of the algorithm, are we suffering from a new digital idol of the market? Does the sheer volume of information actually prevent us from doing the slow work of the interpretation of nature?
We have infinite data, but are we any closer to the truth? Or are we just building a higher resolution cave?
I think we might just be polishing the screen while we're still pushing that obelisk with our bare hands.
Thanks for listening to Talk Treatises.